Welcome, listeners. This is Ivan Franklin Rose, and this is the one on Is it time to give up on your relationship, or is it worth saving? In an article in The Very Well Mind by Annabelle Fournier on August 21st of 23, and this is also medically reviewed by Carly Snyder, psychiatrist and integrative medicine practitioner. She talks about the 4 key signs that it might be time to break up. Many of us don't break up with a significant other when we should, she says, for many different reasons. Some of us are afraid to be alone. Others fall victim to the sunk cost fallacy, which is, I've already invested so much time and effort in this relationship, I can't give it up now. But most of us just ignore the signs that a relationship is falling apart because it's easier to believe that everything is okay until it's not. Knowing exactly when a relationship should be ended is a difficult task. It depends on the people involved and on the situation they live in. But there is fairly consistent evidence about the signs of relationship breakdown unearthed by Dr. John Gottman. The 4 horsemen of the relationship apocalypse, he discovered, that spell disaster for any and all relationships. He's dubbed these the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. Number 1 is criticism. The first horseman of communication is criticism. Criticizing is different than critiquing or complaining. Criticism is about the person's character rather than their behavior. You know, my mom always used to tell me when I was growing up, if I did something wrong, she'd say, I love you, but I don't like your behavior. And she would distinguish her emotional bond with me to something that I had done that I needed to reflect on. So here is the difference between a complaint and a criticism. A complaint, example, is, I really wish you would help me with the dishes. It's a lot of work to do by myself, and while you relax on the sofa watching TV, I have to stay up and clean. A criticism is, you're just a selfish jerk. You never think about how I feel or all the work I do for you. See the difference? And the difference is that the first one is about a specific behavior, and the second one is about the partner as a person. So distinguish between their action and them as a person, like my mom used to do. When criticism is present in a relationship, it doesn't mean that it's doomed to end. Once in a while, when we're angry, we can resort to criticism. But when it becomes pervasive, when it's the only way you can bring up issues with each other, there's a big problem. If you criticize your partner constantly or feel like your partner is constantly criticizing you, it's just a matter of time before it turns into something nastier. Contempt. The relationship may be salvageable at this point, but it's a bad sign, and it should make you consider whether leaving may be a better option. The next is defensiveness. The second horseman, and it's typically in response to criticism or perceived criticism, is defensiveness. In an attempt to defend yourself from perceived attack with a counter-complaint. We can be defensive by shifting blame onto external situations, but more often than not, we are defensive by shifting blame onto the partner, calling for accountability. Here's an example of a defensive response. Complaint. I feel like our sex life has been a bit stale lately, and I feel like you're not really paying attention to my needs and desires in bed. Whereas a defensive response is, well, if you didn't nag me about all the dishes all the time, maybe I'd want to have sex with you. So that's an example of defensive response. In general, humans do not like to be told that they are doing something wrong or hurting other people. We have a tendency to want to think well of ourselves. Conversations like this threaten our self-esteem. Defensiveness is really just a way of shifting the blame back onto your partner. You're saying that the problem isn't you, it's them. Refusing to take even a small amount of responsibility for your role in this situation can cause your partner to feel unseen or unheard. Being constantly defensive in a relationship is a bad sign. It means that the defensive partner is not willing to look at their own behavior and adjust it to stop whatever is harming the other partner. It means that the defensive partner is treating the other as simply an object to fulfill their needs and not as a whole person with needs, feelings, and ideas of their own. If your partner constantly reacts defensively towards you and you to them, it may be a time for you to take a good hard look at your relationship. It may be time to end things. Next is contempt. That's the third horseman. We show contempt when we treat others with disrespect. Contempt can be expressed in many different ways. When we insult others, we use sarcasm, mimic them, roll our eyes, or scoff at them. We call them names or ridicule them. The purpose of this behavior is to diminish the other, to make them feel worthless. If you ever have been treated with contempt, you know how much it hurts. And treating a partner with contempt shows that you have no respect for them at all, or their feelings, or their needs. When contempt is present in a relationship, it's a big red flag. It means that the partners have stopped respecting each other as partners, and now are just trying to assert dominance. There is little love or respect left anymore, and animosity and resentment will grow. If you are being treated this way, there's a very good chance that your partner just doesn't care for you anymore. If you are treating your partner with contempt, then, ask yourself, why are you still with them? If there's no respect between partners, there is little chance that the relationship can be salvaged. Next is stonewalling. This is the last horseman, and it's the most damaging behavior to engage in. Just as defensiveness is a response to criticism, stonewalling is usually a response to contempt. When stonewalling appears in a relationship, communication has essentially broken down. This means that a listener usually avoids eye contact, withdraws, shuts down, or simply stops responding to their partner. This is some examples. When it's reached that stage, it's very difficult, although not impossible, to recover. But it should be very strong. It should be a very strong sign that maybe it's time to move along with your life. This is the feeling when you'd rather do anything else than have a conversation. You only talk when absolutely necessary and foray into a more vulnerable territory. And it's met with a quick escape or silence. So I want to talk about stonewalling a little bit more in depth. This is from an article on stonewalling by Marnie Fuhrman on May 3rd of 23, medically reviewed by Carly Snyder, who we referred to before. Marnie is a psychotherapist that's been helping couples for 27 years. And she says, this is the last horseman, and it's very important, I think, to understand stonewalling before we go on. Stonewalling involves refusing to communicate with another person and withdrawing from the conversation to create distance between the individual and their partner. Intentionally shutting down during an argument, also known as the silent treatment, can be hurtful, frustrating, and harmful to the relationship. Stonewalling is broadly described by the following behaviors: a general discomfort in discussing feelings, dismissing or minimizing the other person's concerns, refusing to respond to questions, refusing to make eye contact or offer nonverbal communication cues, walking away from discussions that cause stress. Stonewalling is rarely effective, and if it becomes a habit, it can reduce a couple's ability to resolve conflicts or interact intimately. This article discusses how to recognize stonewalling, which causes this behavior, and the damaging effect it can have on relationships. It also covers some of the steps you can take if you're dealing with this issue. This is also from the Very Well Mind. Some signs or examples of stonewalling. Many times stonewalling in a relationship is obvious. However, it can also be subtle, and you may not realize that you or your partner are engaging in this behavior. So some signs are ignoring what the other person is saying, changing the subject to avoid an uncomfortable topic, storming off without a word, coming up with reasons not to talk, refusing to answer questions, making accusations rather than talking about the current problem, using dismissive body language such as rolling or closing their eyes, engaging in passive-aggressive behaviors such as stalling or procrastinating to avoid talking about the problem, refusing to ever acknowledge the stonewalling behavior, That's really, some really good examples. And then what does stonewalling feel like? We're going to cover what it feels like to you when it's happening to you. For the person who's being stonewalled, it is normal to feel frustrated, angry, confused, and hurt. It can have a damaging effect on a person's self-esteem and make them feel like there is a lack of trust and closeness in their relationship. To recap, stonewalling is not always easy to recognize. Refusing to talk, avoiding conversations, ignoring the other person, and giving someone the silent treatment are a few signs to look for. Causes. Let's see what causes it. While stonewalling can be hurtful, you shouldn't necessarily assume that it is inherently ill-intended. At its very heart, stonewalling is often a behavior born out of fear, anxiety, and frustration. Some reasons a person may resort to stonewalling include generalized avoidance of conflict, emotional passivity, desire to reduce tension in an emotionally charged situation, genuine belief that they cannot handle a certain topic, fear of a partner's reaction or where a talk may lead to, belief that their partner has no desire to resolve the conflict, underlying hopelessness that a resolution cannot be found, a means to establish themselves as neutral on the subject, a way to view their partner as emotional or unreasonable, a means to manipulate a situation so that they can get their way. That's a good one. And lastly, a means of bringing a situation to a crisis, either to draw large grievances into a conflict or to end the relationship altogether. Stonewalling is oftentimes a tactic learned during childhood. It may have been a behavior their parents used to keep the peace or to gain dominance in the family hierarchy. Even if the stonewalling appears intentional and aggressive, remember that it's often used by people who feel powerless or have low self-worth. Within this context, stonewalling may be a defensive mechanism used to compensate these feelings. Research suggests that men are more likely to stonewall due in part to societal roles that place women as communicators and dictate that men are strong and silent. Let's talk about types of stonewalling. There are a few different ways that stonewalling might appear in a relationship. These include unintentional stonewalling, which is where sometimes, it's a learned response that partners use to cope with difficult or emotional issues. People who stonewall may do so to avoid escalating a fight or to avoid discussing an uncomfortable topic. They may also be afraid of their partner's reaction. The next is intentional stonewalling. In extreme cases, stonewalling is used to manipulate a situation, maintain control in the relationship, or inflict punishment. If you think your partner is verbally abusing you, speak with a counselor or a therapist for advice. Now, there are also healthy behaviors that can be mistaken for stonewalling. For example, it's important to note that stonewalling is not the same thing as asking for space or setting boundaries. Asking for time or space requires communication. When your partner asks to discuss something later with the full intention of coming back to the conversation, they're not stonewalling you. If stonewalling is used to control, belittle, disrespect, or demean the other person, it may be a form of emotional abuse. In such cases, you should reach out to a mental health professional for help or end the relationship. Impact on relationships for stonewalling. Whatever the underlying cause, stonewalling can damage a relationship. Partners who are stonewalled often feel demeaned or abused. They may begin to question their own self-worth. Moreover, shutting someone out often escalates the very situation it was meant to avert. It either forces a confrontation or frustrations built to a point where regrettable things are said or done. Some researchers have suggested that stonewalling is a key predictor for divorce. Stonewalling behaviors signal an unwillingness to resolve problems central to sustaining their relationship. Other studies have shown that the behavior can have a direct psychological impact on both partners. A 2016 study, which followed 156 couples over a 15-year period, concluded that stonewalling was associated with acute musculoskeletal symptoms such as backaches, neck stiffness, and generalized muscle aches. By contrast, the stonewalled partner was more likely to experience cardiovascular symptoms such as increased blood pressure, tension headaches, and rapid heart rate. But why does stonewalling damage relationships? Well, it's a negative and destructive way of communicating. It often causes people to withdraw from each other, which harms the emotional intimacy in a relationship. As people withdraw, it creates a sense of distance, and the people in a relationship may begin to grow apart. Is stonewalling manipulative or abusive? Well, it can be when the other person does it intentionally and uses it in ways to manipulate or control other people. It can be a tactic to shift the blame for relationship problems onto the other person without taking any personal responsibility. Is stonewalling a type of gaslighting? Well, it can be when it's used to intentionally make people question their reality. Gaslighting, we talked about before in an earlier podcast, involves causing people to doubt themselves and their experiences. Being ignored can leave you feeling powerless and useless. You might blame yourself or even doubt your own interpretation of the situation. Because of this self-doubt, people who are being stonewalled might feel weak or unable to get out of a toxic relationship. So let's talk about it. Should you break up? The important thing to remember is that all couples engage in criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling at times. But consistently using one or more of these behaviors is a definite sign that something is not right in your relationship. Of course, if you're both willing to put in the work, a couples therapist may be able to help you both stop using these communication strategies and give you the tools to effectively communicate your emotions. Ultimately, you are the best judge of your own relationship and situations. I want to talk about things to consider before breaking up. This is from also the Very Well Mind, and this is the other side of the coin. All right, so the majority of long-term relationship will face serious issues at one point or another. These conflicts, however, don't have to mean it's the end. When handled in a healthy, productive way, working through your issues can make your partnership even stronger. Instead of abruptly ending your relationship, take some time to evaluate the positive things in your relationship. Doing this could help keep you from making a decision you might come to regret. While it might feel like things aren't going well, there could be a number of reasons why this is the case. So take time to examine your relationship before deciding it is over. This article discusses some reasons why it might be worth fighting for your relationship. This is the other side of the coin, such as trust, aligned core values, or at the same time, shared vision for the future, even if you feel like it's already too late. It's like the old proverb, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. If it can be saved, these are some things that I'll share with you, reasons to feel that way, that it could be saved. So, signs your relationship is worth fighting for. There are some signs your relationship is worth fighting for. When reading through them, consider how you feel about your relationship in general. If most apply to you, there's a chance you have a solid foundation to build on. These are 9 signs. So, first, you have mutual trust. Then, you have similar values. You want the same things. You're both committed to resolving your issues. You can be yourself around the other person. That's so important. Your differences are complementary. You're willing to forgive. You share a certain level of respect. Your time together is mainly good. Those are signs that your relationship could be worth giving another chance. You trust each other is important. Trust is one of the key elements in a healthy relationship. It also establishes how well partners treat each other. If you notice that overall your partner treats you well, is reliable, and they're there when you need them the most, you consider that a positive sign. In a 2019 Pew Research Center study on marriage and cohabitation in the United States, it was shown that married adults are more likely than those cohabitating to say that they had a great deal of trust in their spouse to be faithful, act in their best interest, tell the truth, and handle money responsibly. This highlights that if trust with your spouse is still strong, it's a valid reason to try and work things out. Trust is the foundation of every good marriage, and you already have this important piece. Starting over with someone new will mean going back to that "can I trust you" phase, which you don't need to do with your current spouse. Your core values align is the next thing to consider. Regardless of how much we'd like to find that one person who's perfect in every single way, realistically, 2 people will never agree on everything. However, the good news is that as long as there is some common ground and most of your core values are aligned, for example, regarding religion, finances, politics, and so on, the subtle differences don't have to be deal breakers. They can actually strengthen your relationship with one another and keep it interesting. So other examples of core values include honesty, integrity, joy, love, kindness, generosity, compassion, ambition, courage, accountability, family, fun, balance, adventure, peace. You share a vision. Another way to know if your relationship is worth fighting for is that both of you share a vision for your future. Essentially, this means that you want the same things in life. A typical example of this is children. If one of you can't wait to have kids while the other would prefer a child-free life, your visions don't match up. Or if one of you wants to travel the world while the other one wants to settle down in a small town, your visions are not in alignment. Important to know this. Of course, it's essential to be flexible and find a creative way for both of your dreams to coexist with one another. In the end, you just want to know you've both lived your lives to the fullest without regret or too much sacrifice. The next thing to consider is you feel dedicated, even when times are tough. Another hallmark of a healthy relationship is staying connected despite any external or internal stressors. Conflict is unavoidable in relationships. Psychologist Dan Wiles summarizes this point in his book, After the Honeymoon. When choosing a long-term partner, you will inevitably be choosing a particular set of unresolved problems, he says. No matter how large the challenge, both of you are committed to overcoming it together. You view one another as a teammate, a partner, a confidant, and a source of support. No matter how large the challenge, both of you are committed to overcoming it together. So, if you're both willing to put in the necessary time and effort to resolve any issues, it may be a good indication you're on the same page. The next thing to consider is that you can be your authentic self. The greatest relationships involve two separate people with two separate identities. You should feel confident in being yourself in a healthy relationship. While every couple has varying openness and self-disclosure levels, you should never feel like you have to hide certain aspects of yourself or change who you are. Very important. Being transparent and honest with one another not only helps you feel connected as a couple, but also strengthens your trust. When your partner accepts you for who you are, flaws and all, then that's something worth fighting for. The next is you are difficult but complement each other. Arguments and conflicts are normal to have between people in love. Fights over insignificant and trivial things are a part of every relationship. So what do these disagreements do? Sometimes they become the reason why two people grow apart, but for others, it forces them to come up with creative solutions that meet the needs of both individuals. If you are very different, but manage to work together and compromise, you might end up learning from each other or experiencing things that you might not have if you were both the same. As long as you are able to compromise, this can keep the relationship interesting. Take some time and ask yourself if your differences complement each other or create more harm than good. You're willing to forgive is the next one. Forgiveness is essential in any relationship. While it can certainly take time and be a process to move forward, the key is that you're both willing to ultimately forgive one another for whatever has happened in the past, and that you can fully open your hearts to your future together. And the next is you respect one another. And in an intimate, healthy relationship, people share respect for one another. They don't shame or belittle each other and offer support, comfort, and security. This is the complete opposite of a toxic relationship. There are various ways that couples can be respectful towards one another. Examples of this can include, and we've covered this actually in some other podcasts you'll recognize. Number one is active listening. Then being attentive to each other's needs. Forgiving one another. Creating space and making time in your lives for one another. Showing interest in the things your partner enjoys, even if you don't like them. Allowing your partner to have their independence. Giving them space. Supporting and encouraging one another. expressing appreciation and gratitude, expressing and practicing empathy. Those are some ways which you can respect another. And then there are still mostly happy moments in your relationship. That is a way to tell that maybe it's time to try again and to keep together. When most of the moments you share still feel good, it's a sign that your relationship is worth holding on to and fighting for. Yes, there will be times when arguments arise over petty matters like chores or finances, but those fights don't tarnish all the happy memories you have shared while being with one another. Well, these are things that I think will give you an idea of whether it's time to break up or time to give it one more chance. Before you give up, evaluate these last things that we went over and see if there's any hope, any reason to keep the bond that you once had from breaking. But if it has to, just know that it's better for you to start over than to live a life that you hate and that can't be fixed and can't be solved. Everyone deserves to be happy. You deserve to be happy with your partner. But if that isn't possible, then recognize it, and maybe they'll be happy with someone else, and so will you. It doesn't hurt to recognize the truth, but these are keys and tips, I hope, to help you get there. So, as difficult an episode as that was, hopefully it's been helpful in helping those who have this situation decide. But please remember that no matter what you're going through in your personal life, in your job life, that if you wake up each day with a smile, try to find something to be happy over. At least it gives you a chance to have a happy day, as opposed to waking up negatively and then you have no chance. Give yourself a break, find a reason to smile, and until next time, listeners, good day.